Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be the host for this program, International Graduate Sharing Session, Sustainable Knowledge and Research Across Boundaries. But before that, may I know, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Vanessa. Good morning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this sharing session is divided into two clusters: Science, Technology and Engineering Cluster, STE, and Social Science, Humanities and Education Cluster, SSHE. I, Vanessa and Julia Anaban, will be moderating for the first cluster session. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you for taking a time off of your busy schedules to join us here today. We hope by the end of this session, you will gain a lot of knowledge and may be fruitful and engaging. For the STE cluster, we have invited 3 speakers to share their personal views. We have Ms. Syazwana Sapee from Universiti Malaysia Pahang, Mr. Pahweenvaj Ratnatilaka Bhuket from University of Utah, United States, and Mr. 𝘊𝘭𝘥𝘪𝘵𝘢𝘐𝑚 from the Institute of Space Technology, Pakistan. Now, without further ado, we would start our first session by listening to a talk from our first speaker, Ms. Syazwana Sapee, who is currently in her final stage of thesis writing for Doctor of Philosophy, PhD in Mechanical Engineering at UPM, while serving student as the president of Postgraduate Association in UMP. UMP. She would be sharing her views on the effect of oxygenated turpentine oil additive in diesel fuel on the performance and emission characteristics in one-cylinder DI engines. Please welcome Ms. Syazwana.
Thank you very much, Miss Vanessa.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
All right. Let me share my screen first. Wait a minute. All right then. So I hope that you guys can see my screen. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank to GSA because of inviting us and organizing this very beneficial program for sharing our knowledge. Okay, so today I'm gonna present about the effect of oxygenated turpentine oil additive in diesel fuel on the performance and also in emission characteristic in diesel engine. Okay. So why actually we do this research? Because of we need to have the alternative fuel due to the fossil fuel depletion, rising costs and harmful gases emission from the combustion during the engine using the diesel engine. So mixing the diesel fuel with additive is one of the attempts to reduce the emission from the diesel combustion. So we have a lot of additive we can use. For example, organometal, nitrate, oxygenated, which we have a lot of compound rich of oxygen, and also we have natural matter such as bioactive. Okay, for example, let me share some of the previous. Normally we will use biodiesel. Biodiesel is a fatty acid that we use from the animal or fat. So we do the, for example, transesterification and make the new oil, and then we replace it for either diesel or gasoline. But my approach, this study, the present study, we will try to use the bioadditive, which is something that additive that we use from the bio-oxygenated. So the one that terpentin is actually from pine tree. So it's something like spirit, the one that we use for painting. I mean, the spirit. Yeah, that one is terpentin actually. So when we say oxygenated terpentin, we do the process of oxidize process to the terpentin, and we add up the oxygen in that terpentin, and then we apply it in the diesel fuel and use it in diesel engine. Okay, so we will go through one by one. Okay, for the one that I said bioadditive, for example, we have clove oil, lemongrass oil, rosemary, terpentin, or peppermint. Okay, for all of this selection, we use actually based on the soluble of the oil into diesel or gasoline. Okay, the second thing is about the oxygen content of this additive. Because of this additive is well known, have higher oxygen content compared to diesel. And also the last thing that we take into consideration is bulky, which is rigid structure. Rigid structure, we can see that they have the close structure, and also let's say we have a double bond compound for O and C. Okay, next. So in terpentin, actually we have alpha-pinene and also beta-pinene. So as you can see, this alpha-pinene, we have double bond. Beta-pinene also have double bond, and delta-carbon also have double bond. So from there, we know that it's have a potential for us to use it in the diesel engine, so we can check the performance and also the emission. Okay, for the oxygenated reaction, it's actually the alpha-pinene is one of the major compound in terpentin. So from this molecule, when we do the oxygenated, it gonna produce another molecule, and that molecule also have a lot of oxygen compound, higher oxygen content compound, and also you can see that also they have a double bond there. Okay, so in theory, the one that we collaborated with the chemical department in Universiti Pendidikan Indonesia, so they find out that actually by using this this molecule with a bulky rigid structure, actually we will disturb the van der Waals forces between the diesel oil. So you can see at the top is the structure of diesel oil. However, when we add the terpentin oil, as I said, the major compound is alpha-pinene. It's going to disturb the van der Waals forces, and it makes it very easy to combust later on. Okay, I go directly to the experimental. Maybe I need to add up some of the things regarding the why actually we use the oxygenated, because of from the previous study, we have a lot of cases that they reported that by using the rich in oxygen oxygenated into diesel fuel would reduce the smoke and also the NOx of the production up until 61%. So it's very interesting theory, which from time to time the researcher like to explore more about that. Okay, another thing that we claim that by how to reduce the soot, actually it relate to the oxygen mass fraction in the fuel also. So from there we can see that there has a lot of reason for us to select when one particular fuel to be chosen as additive. Okay, terpentine itself, as I said, it's actually belong to the pine pine species, and it is flammable. That one is another thing that we need to take note, where it's a very high potential for us to use as additive, and also the calorific value. The calorific value of terpentine is higher than diesel, which is calorific value is the energy they have in one fuel, one substance. Okay, I think that's the few interesting characteristic of terpentine that make it very interesting additive. Okay, despite the molecule structure that I already show you that, and then we also have some few of the researcher that already use terpentine, and it show great potential. Okay, so in my research, actually in this present study, we use only 0.2% volume of oxygenated terpentine as additive. That's mean we don't want to make it very high, and we want to we try so much to reduce the amount of additive, and we try to get as much as possible the effect of it, the good effect from it. Okay, so in here we can see that all the structure that has a bulky structure in the terpentine make it help to enhance the combustion. However, we have lack of further research in oxygenated terpentine. So that's the novelty of this study, where we do the oxidation to the terpentine. Then we use the new product, the new compound in the diesel fuel. Okay. Next, we move to the experimental engine testing, where we, as shown in the slide, that that's our schematic diagram, where we put all the instrument that need to get the characteristic for performance and also for emission. Okay, I also want to share with you that actually this Yanmar diesel engine is one or single cylinder engine, and then it uses 4-stroke, and also we use the hydraulic dynamometer, which we rely on the coolant of the hydraulic oil for the radiator purposes. Okay, so for the instrument that we use to take the emission, exhaust emission, we use the gas analyzer, and then I think that's all that the important unit here. Okay, this is the test rig setup. This is where the coolant, and then this is our engine exhaust. This one is the air intake, air box for us to supply the constant air intake. Okay, this is where we measure, and then we recorded the fuel consumption, the fuel used for every engine condition. Okay, this one is engine part, where exhaust pipe is here, and then this is the pipe, the intake air that connected to the airbox that I showed earlier. And then we also have the fuel filter, flywheel, and shaft that are connected to the dynamometer, so that we can apply the load. And then the fuel line that connect directly to the engine, so that we can change the fuel whenever it needed or necessary. And then the rest is actually unmodified engine from Yanmar model TF120M. Okay, next. Okay, after we get the fuel, and then we blend it with the diesel with that particular 0.2% volume per volume amount. So we will get the properties of it. So from these properties, actually, we will relate it to the performance and also the emission that we get later on, because all of these characteristics is the major causes that affect the performance. For example, power, torque, and the fuel consumption. Okay, next, this is the chromatogram of diesel fuel, and then the oxygenated turpentine. Okay, from here we're using GCMS method, where we want to check about the compound, the one that I said about the molecule and then the bulky rigid structure, right? Okay, this is a chemical constitution for the diesel. So you can see most of it, the structure seem like before this I show in the van der Waals structure, like that. And then we compare to the oxygenated turpentine. Okay, for the oxygenated turpentine, most of it we can see all the molecule formula here. They have this bulky structure and also double bond for their carbon, and also they have also oxygen in here, and then also here. Okay, so from there, it is proven that the one that we try to apply to add the oxygen content to the fuel, additive fuel, before we use it we apply it into the diesel, is work is done. So the next step to apply it in the diesel. So in the testing parameter, the input, we're gonna use 7 engine speed, which we vary 20% for each, 200 RPM for each, and then we're using 2 engine load, which is low load and also medium load. And for the output, we're gonna check the performance, which is power, torque, fuel consumption, and then we're gonna check for the emission, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and then NOx. Okay, so for engine power, the indicator power, the engine power is the power, output power that the engine produce when use one particular fuel. So from here, we can see it at this is for 25% load, and then this one is for 50% load. Okay, from here we can see that they have reduction between diesel and also oxygenated turpentine. Okay, however, as the increasing of the speed, we can see it become higher. That means the power produced by oxygenated turpentine fuel is better than diesel. Okay, for the load 50%, even though they do it doesn't show any significant at the early stage, I mean at the low state. However, at the middle, we can see the increases of the power, and then at the high state also they have increases of power here. Okay, that's one thing that I think we achieve. And then the second parameter is torque. Okay, for torque, it can be seen that most of it they have reduction, a slight reduction, a slight decreases in the top performance for 20% load, and then for that 50% load at the medium speed engine, they have slightly increased. However, at the low speed and also at high speed, for example, here they have a reduction, a bit of a reduction there. Okay, next we move to the fuel consumption. Fuel consumption is the fuel that we use, the amount of fuel that we use to produce 1 kilowatt. I mean, 1 kilowatt is power. Okay, so how much that we need to produce this 1 kilowatt of power? So if we can see like this. If we use a lot of fuel to produce 1 kilowatt power, that's mean of course we want to have a lower fuel consumption rather than to have more fuel consumption. I mean, if you want, for example, we as a user, if we want to travel, we want to save and also we want to use as minimum as possible the fuel, right? So that's why we aim to reduce the fuel consumption. Okay, so we can see in here 25%. Most of the 25%, we can see they are slightly increases. And then, however, in this particular 50% load, we can see a bit of decreases in low speed engine, and also at the 2400 RPM, which is the maximum speed for this engine, it shows a great reduction there. For 2200 also they have a reduction. However, at the middle, we didn't see a lot of reduction. However, it is increases. Okay, I didn't explain to you about this load. This load is actually like for example, I will try to use the common example. For example, the low load, something like we use the car with only one person in it, the driver only. However, for the medium load, maybe we have the driver and the co-pilot. And if we use high load, higher than 50, it's like we have another 3 person in the car, for example, like that. So that's the load meaning. Next, we move to the carbon monoxide. Okay, carbon monoxide is the exhaust that produced from the combustion. Okay, so it's like this. If the combustion is complete, it's gonna produce CO2. CO is something like incomplete combustion product. So we can see from here the difference between diesel and oxygenated turpentine. It doesn't have a lot of changes much, but in this few speed 1200 and 1600, we can see it increases. That means it's incomplete combustion in there. However, at 2400, we can see a great reduction there. That reduction means we have reduced the carbon monoxide. So the combustion become complete as we use the higher engine speed. And then for this 50% load, most of it show reduction from here, and also here. However, at few speed, engine speed, they don't show any particular difference there. So we can see from there, by using this OT, it improved the emission produced by the engine. And then next is carbon dioxide. So for this carbon dioxide, as you can see, for few engines any different. However, at another few like 1,200, 2,000, and 2,400 at 25% rate, it become higher, which means, as I said, if it is higher, that means the combustion become complete. So it is better that way. And then for this 50% rate, also most of it show increases of the CO2. Okay. Next is nitrogen oxide. Nitrogen oxide is very crucial for the diesel engine, because diesel engine combustion mostly produce a lot of NOx. So we try to reduce it. However, in this study, we didn't manage to reduce it. However, it only become higher a bit. Okay, this is because of the NOx is actually relate to the temperature. So if the temperature higher, makes the NOx production of NOx is higher. Okay, what about temperature? Actually, temperature is about, it relate to the in-cylinder pressure. So in-cylinder pressure, if higher in-cylinder pressure, it is well known that higher in-cylinder pressure, higher temperature, and also higher NOx is actually better combustion. That's all. Easy to understand. That's simple. Okay. So as conclusion, we can see that engine power using this study, engine power is slightly increased up to 1.1%. However, the torque is decreased by using this oxygenated dependent oil. For this fuel consumption, it shows the enhancement up to 9.09%. For CO emission, they are slightly increment up to averagely 1.2%. And then for CO2, it increased up to 37%. For NOx, also increased up to 7.9%. Okay, for this recommendation for our study here, we recommend to have this load apply for the higher load, as I said, maybe full load. And then maybe after this, we can use the higher volume of additive to be tested in this fuel and engine. And then the next, maybe we can use the higher power of engine with higher speed, or maybe we can use different type of engine. For example, gasoline engine, the one that we use in the car, or maybe we can use another, maybe 2 or 3 type of a different cylinder engine. Okay, I think that's all from me. Is there any question?
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Syazwana, for the wonderful sharings. Well, there's one thing I forgot to ask you just now. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for asking.
Okay, glad to know you're doing fine. I hope everyone else is doing fine as well. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, next we'll move on to the Q&A session with Miss Syazwana. If you have any queries regarding the topic, please don't hesitate to ask. You may turn on your microphone, or you may also type your questions inside the chat box or comment section for those who watch this event through YouTube Live. I'm sure Ms. Syazwana will be ready to give the answers to your question. Please, anyone, you may come forth and ask. Okay, first question here from the chat box from Shahir Anwar. Can this method be applied to other type of oil to improve its performance?
Yes, of course. This method can be applied to any other type of oil. Of course, however, they also have a lot of other methods depending on the type of fuel that we use to aim for the improvement of performance. Thank you for asking, Shahi, Mr. Shahi.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have from 𝘗𝘧𝘦𝘪𝘡𝘦. What are the challenges that you face during conducting the experiments?
Okay, the challenges actually, I think the experiment is minor. We can see that actually we take few months to do the setup. However, the experiment only take like a week only. So we can see actually during the experiment we don't have much challenges. Only yes, of course we are playing with the diesel. Of course, they have a lot of exhaust emission there. So yes, we need to bear with that. However, I would say the most challenging part is actually to do the setup first, because if we want to do the engine experiment testing, it is better for us to plan properly before we execute into the testing, the engine testing. Thank you, Mr. Zulkarnain, for asking.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Syazwana, for the answer. Anyone else like to ask? We're still open.
Hi, Syazwana, Anne here.
Hi, Anne. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How about you? How's your day?
I'm fine.
Okay. So I missed some parts of the earlier your presentation. You said that your project what is the one that you said earlier? Lower combustion is good or higher combustion is good? I forgot that one.
Actually, higher combustion is good.
Okay. If lower combustion, if the temperature of the lower combustion, I think it's much better, right? Because the engine lose less energy. Because we are going to have a energy efficiency, so we want to lesser engine lose rather than if higher combustion, meaning that more energy will be lost, right? So what's your opinion? Thank you.
Okay, most welcome. This is actually a very tricky question. Okay. As everyone knows, we as a researcher doing engine testing, we know that actually you cannot get everything perfect. For example, we can get higher performance, but we reduce the combustion performance characteristic. However, the one that you asked just now about the temperature for this in this particular mechanism, it's actually we want it to be higher because of for higher combustion, that's mean a complete combustion. Complete combustion, that's mean all the fuel and then air has been used to produce the power. However, if we want to reduce it, I understand that we want to reduce the energy. However, if we want to reduce the energy, we're going to reduce the power. You can see how tricky is it. So yeah. So actually, if we want to do this kind of research, actually we're gonna observe every part of it, and then whatever good that we get, then we can report, and then for all the not really improving part, also we need to report because of that's the true nature of every oil. For example, diesel that we been using for years, like decades. It's very good in combustion. However, it is well known that it produces a lot of NOx. Okay, another thing that I think good for us to discuss is actually why diesel engine, why not gasoline engine? Because of the diesel engine that we've been using for the ship and then lorry, all the big industry using diesel engine because of it produce more power. So if it produce more power, actually it produce more emission. That's the thing. So that's why a lot of people jump into this research to find all the alternative to meet the optimum between higher performance, higher combustion, however reduce. Maybe we don't get everything, but yeah, that's why we try to make the middle point for everything. Thank you very much for asking, Em. Very good question.
Okay, maybe can add a question. Because I can't figure out how was the experiment that's going on, right? And then I'm when you said about combustion, so I'm thinking of maybe do you have any difficulty to controlling the start of the combustion, controlling maybe you have some difficulty like lack of fuel injection or something else? Do you have
Yeah.
any difficulty on so and start that?
Yes, actually, when we use the engine, what is the most unpredictable part is actually when we use the engine for too long. So, you know that bila engine dah panas, okay? So we want to check for another fuel. Let's say we want to change for another fuel. However, this particular engine condition is not similar from the previous one. So it's something that we need to wait until it is somehow. And then of course they have a lot of this leaking for the radiator, and then I think all of this funny clumsy movement, I think. However, it's something that need to be done. I mean, when you run the experiment, somehow suddenly the NOx become higher, like the one that I show you, maybe less than 50. However, we managed to get the value up until 5,000. So it's very huge range there. So of course we need to figure things out why it happened. Is it because of fuel or because of the setup of or because of the instrument? So what can I say about this conducting the experiment? We need to figure out every small detail, and somehow sometimes we thought that it is because of this part, the exhaust part. However, it's actually from the engine part, not the exhaust part. So yeah, like all of us not really professional, like the mechanic, of course. So we just do the try and error guessing for resolve the issue there whenever it arises. So I can see actually how we how actually we try to manage this thing is by using the reference. So if we have the reference, we know the value is supposed to be like from the previous researcher for this combustion at this particular engine condition, it's supposed to be around this range, like say 200 until 300 EGP exhaust gas temperature. However, if we in our experiment during the testing we reach until 500, we need to immediately cut it off and then figure out what happening there. So yeah, it's something that we face during the experiment. I hope it's answering your question.
Okay, thank you, Miss N, for asking, and also Miss Syazwana for explaining. And there's another question from Shahid. What is your planning to improve the combustion process in order to get better properties than existing oil?
Okay. So thank you very much, Shahid. I think you really like this this particular topic. Okay. Actually, for this during my current research, my PhD, actually I use 4 different type of additive. However, as you mentioned to me earlier, I cannot share it yet because of it's not been published yet. So the one that I'm sharing is something that it has been published few months ago. So yes, we use a lot of other bio additive in this diesel, but I'm very interested with this terpentine. So what did I do? Actually, take the one that I said 𝘊𝘭𝘺𝘺. We just took out the 𝘊𝘭𝘺𝘺 part and extract it from terpentine. Then we test on the 𝘊𝘭𝘺𝘺. Okay, so what can we say because of this interesting, we said that it's bulky structure and then higher oxygen content. So we want to prove, is it something better than terpentine? Yes, it is. So another thing that I do is actually to add up these 2 particular additive with oxygen. So after I have this 2 additive, I create another 2 by making the oxygenated terpentine and oxygenated 𝘊𝘭𝘺𝘺. However, it's very interesting. We can see this particular additive have improvement while we adding the oxygen content in the fuel. However, another type of additive, after we add the oxygen in that 𝘊𝘭𝘺𝘺, it didn't show great enhancement in characteristic of performance and also combustion. So it's something that I and my supervisor track back with our team in chemical department and ask them what is happening. It is because of their reaction. So it becomes something like we don't know much about that. We only do the mechanical part. However, they have a reason in there that actually that 𝘊𝘭𝘺𝘺 is very reactive, and then by adding another oxygen, it cannot cope it. So we fail in that. However, we can see the interesting part that most of us claim that oxygen content improvement will improve the fuel and also the characteristic of combustion. However, it was proven not for all. Thank you, Shahi. I hope you understand this. What do you think that's
Yeah, I understand it.
Okay, there's another one from him. What do you think of the acceptance of Malaysian society in a new type of oil as potential replacement in the future?
It depends on the. Okay, I think maybe we can share about in Europe, for example, Brazil, it is compulsory to use B20. I think B20 is like 2 years ago. It's compulsory. I mean, all the petrol station using this B20 because of it is worldwide known that the petroleum fuel is depleting. So we need to find alternative for it. And of course, as we know, Tesla, they even use the electric vehicle just because of we want to cope with this what is happening right here. So for Malaysia society, I think like it or not, if we don't have the supply, you have the demand, we need to use it for transportation, for industrial matter, for shipping and everything. But if we don't have the fuel, if you like it or not, we still need to use it. So it depends on the situation in the future. And then I can see actually if our government make a policy about that, it is much easier for the Malaysian society to accept it. Thank you very much, Shahi. Hi. Baru on camera.
Okay, is there any more questions? If there's none, I guess I could ask one.
All right.
So, may I know how did you manage to do your research activities, especially during your period as a postgraduate president?
To be honest, the progress is quite slow compared to right now. I think within these 3 weeks after I finished the period. Oh, by the way, for your information, we already complete our service by end of year last year. So yeah, we already completed. So this year I can focus, like really focus to submit my draft thesis, hopefully by end of this month. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Syazwana. Is there any more questions from the participants? We'll give you how many minutes?
3 seconds.
3 seconds. Okay, 3 seconds for others people to ask. Okay.
I'm hungry.
Oh, you haven't had your breakfast yet?
Not yet.
Same. I haven't had mine.
How about coffee?
Later I'll go down and buy one.
Oh, all right. So for me, I asked about GSA program. So do you guys have any other program after this? Alamak. And dah gelak dah. Syahi pun dah gelak. Salah ke soalan?
Dia punya apa ni soalan apa tu after this we actually in the end of our period as a current committee, so we're expecting to have our AGM on the first week of March, hopefully. So for the next month we just have a 1 or 2 program that's more on how to develop the potential GSA committee. So during the March, the new committee will set up a new games for for our program.
So you guys already recruiting the new one?
Yeah, we start recruiting by asking our friends. I think I need to step down from this position. I also have some difficulties, like Syazwana says, that when we have a position, we tend to think that I need to do this, I need to do this to our society. So my supervisor also have asking for my thesis submitted. So hopefully hopefully around February or March I can submit.
Oh, pun
Hopefully.
dah nak jalan. Alright,
Uh,
good luck.
all right. I think pass back to Vanessa.
All right. Since I did not receive any response or questions from other participants, I guess that is it for our first session with Ms. Syazwana. Thank you so much for the sharings and the feedbacks that you gave throughout the session. We appreciate it very much. Okay, hopefully the audiences could still keep up with this event because we have just ended the first round and we still have another 2 more rounds to go. If it includes the afternoon session, 5 more. So sit tight, as for now we'll be entering the second session with also a PhD student, but in pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical chemistry, who would share his perspective in the interspecies differences in the plasma metabolism of ester prodrugs, a case study on the hydrolytic cleavage of curcumin diethylbisphosphonate. I present Mr. Pahweenvaj Ratnatilaka Bhuket from the University of Utah, United States.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here. So I changed my name a little bit.
Oh, okay. How are
But you
you?
can accept my name perfectly, I would say.
Oh, okay. Okay. How's your day today?
It's been okay. It's been a long day.
Okay. Good to
How are you
hear.
doing?
Hmm?
So, how are you doing?
We're doing fine. I'm doing fine. Thank you. So you can go ahead and present what you have ready for us today.
Okay. Let me see if. So I think now you are seeing my. You're seeing a big screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I may cough during my talk because I got sick last week and I just got recovered. So I may cough during my talk, but please forgive me for that. Because of, okay, let me see. All right. First of all, I want to thank GSA from THM, right? I'm sorry. Yeah. For inviting me to share my research, and it's my honor to be here to share my research with you. Actually, I'm from Thailand and I came to the States in 2019 for my PhD study. The research that I'm going to share with you today was the research that I did when I was a master's student in Thailand. So let's begin with the first slide. Oops, what is that? Let me see what is that. Are you still seeing this green light here?
Yes, the green line is still there.
So what if, oops, I apologize for this technical issue. Okay, see better. So I'm not so sure if everyone here is familiar with drug development process, but I'll give a quick overview about it a little bit. So in drug discovery and development, there are 3 main phases involved in this process, which are target validation and drug candidate discovery, preclinical development or testing in animals, and clinical studies which are conducted in humans. So in each stage, here, there are several research areas that involve, like you can see here, for example, in target validation and drug candidates discovery, it involved with discover new drug target. It involved with discover new chemical entities that may have biological activities to the target that we are interested in. And once we have kind of lead or drug candidate from the first step, we move to the next step, which is the preclinical studies. In this step, we investigate a lot of things in animal models, either how drug candidate act at the body level in animals, or how the drug candidates, I would say, travel inside the body, which is called pharmacokinetics. If everything is doing okay, or if everything is performing good and excellent in preclinical stage, then that molecule is moved toward humans. The entire process may take 10 or 15 years to get a drug into the market. And even though the drug can reach to the market, sometimes it fails in the real world usage. So it needs to be terminated. As you can see here, there are several circles in front of each research area. So this is kind of to show that there are many sectors that can involve in this entire drug discovery and development process sector, industry, regulatory agencies. So most of the time they kind of work together to get one molecule from the bench to bedside. In my previous research, I focused on the in vitro assay, which is the in vitro pharmacokinetic study. Actually, we also had kind of preclinical pharmacokinetic study, but I'm not going to talk about it for today. So as I mentioned earlier, I did the in vitro pharmacokinetic study. So why we do in vitro assay instead of doing in animals directly. So when we have a drug candidate or a lead compound, we want to test its performance, whether if this is gonna be working good in the body, right? But we don't want to use a lot of animals. So we usually prefer to screen drug candidates or lead compounds that we develop in the lab first by using in vitro system. In the pharmacokinetics, it has 3 components, which are absorption, distribution, metabolism, and elimination. So these are the processes that our body acts on a drug molecule. And there are many assays that we can use to evaluate from the pharmacokinetic properties of a drug candidate or the lead molecule. In vitro, for some of you that may not be familiar with in vitro or the term of in vitro means that you conduct experiment like using like glasswares, plasticwares. In vivo means that you conduct experiment inside the body of either in animal or human. In my case, I did the plasma stability of an ester compound or plasma metabolism of an ester compound. So what are ester compounds? So let's get back to chemistry a little bit. When we have carboxylic acid and alcohol, and when we combine them together, after both of them undergo condensation process, we get an ester bond here. So this is kind of a general chemical structure for an ester compound. In drug markets, there are several drugs that are ester-based. For example, esmolol, which is used as a cardiovascular agent in our pill that we use for lowering our blood pressure. Obesocane as we use for to relieve pain, and 𝘊𝘆𝘺𝘺𝘐, which is the drug that we use to treat flu. If we want to categorize drug into groups, we can categorize them into two categories, which are soft drugs and prodrugs. So what are they? Soft drugs are drug molecules that the parent structure are biologically active. Once they get into the body, they undergo certain biotransformation process, for example, like hydrolysis, and they become their metabolite that are inactive. So that means that for soft drugs, they are active. Once they get into the body, they become inactive after undergoing some or certain biotransformation process. So soft drug is deactivated inside the body. This is to our body does that to terminate the pharmacological action of the drug molecule and can reduce the potential toxicity that can happen to us. So these two are examples of the compounds that are considered to be soft drug. The top one is 𝘊𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺. This is not a drug molecule, but it has a psychotic activity if we receive it into our body. Or benzocaine, once the ester bond is cleaved in the body, its local anesthetic property is diminished. For prodrugs, prodrugs are kind of opposite to soft drugs. Prodrugs are the pharmacologically inactive compound that once they get into our body, they undergo certain biotransformation process, for example, hydrolysis. And once they undergo certain biotransformation process, they become the active compound or active metabolites. Why we need to do products? Because some biological active molecules, they have undesired physical, chemical, and biopharmaceutical properties that we can use as a real drug molecule. For example, enalapril here, it is considered as the prodrug, but the active compound actually is enalapril, which have free carboxylic group here. If this carboxylic group is like a free carboxylic acid, when this enalapril is taken, it will have two negative charges on the molecule, which prevent it to be absorbed by our small intestine. So once we add this ethyl group to make it an ester bond here, we reduce the charge by 1 unit, right? And it also have like the net charge is like 0 inside our small intestine. At this point, this molecule can be absorbed by our small intestine. So the product approach here has been used to manipulate or improve the physical, chemical, and biopharmaceutical properties of several drug candidates or compounds, either by improving solubility, stability, membrane bioavailability. In our body, there are several organs that can perform biotransformation, or we can say that performing metabolism. The main organs that are responsible for drug metabolism is the liver. Besides certain organs, our blood is another source of drug metabolism because our blood contains several esterase enzymes. For example, in the blood, it has carboxylic esterase, acetylcholine esterase, butyrylcholine esterase, and peroxygenase or aryl esterase. this is an example for, because we are going to focus on ester-based drugs. So after this, I will focus on ester-based compound. So once we have ester compounds in the blood, ester compounds undergo hydrolysis mediated by esterase in the blood and give free drug molecule that can act on the target site if ester-based drugs are prodrugs. However, it doesn't mean that these esterase are found in like between species, for example, in rat, dog, human, or monkey. It doesn't mean that we all share the same esterase expression and activities among species. And why does it matter to like studying plasma metabolism? So because for the product design, we want to make sure that the product that we design initially can really liberate the pharmacologically active compound inside our body. If the product that we design cannot give the active compound inside our body, so we are not going to see any activities from the compound, right? And in pharmacokinetic studies, in this type of study, we need to collect samples from the body. For example, we collect blood, we collect tissue, we collect, let's say, saliva. In certain metrics, like blood, as you know, it contains certain enzymes that can change or degrade our target analyzed in the sample. So if we don't have any knowledge in the kind of transformation or degradation of our compound inside the matrix, for example, in blood, it could lead to the overestimation or underestimation of our target analyzed in the sample. So in the in vitro stability and metabolism of ester compound in plasma involved with several studies. For example, you may want to investigate the effect of temperature, which you can use for future experiment, like the data from the effect of temperature. You may want to determine the time profile of compound degradation in the matrix. You may want to know what is or what are intermediate and terminal metabolites formed during plasma metabolism. And also you may want to know what enzyme involved with the metabolism of your compound in the blood. There are three major ways to identify enzymes that involve in plasma in drug metabolism. The first one is the use of specific antibody, which will quench the enzymatic reaction. The second one is to use recombinant enzyme, so that you can get enzyme kinetics parameter from your assay. The last one is to use the specific or selective inhibitor. The last approach is not the, it's the cheapest one, because chemicals are basically cheaper than proteins, right? It may not give us a really clear answer of which enzyme involved in the drug metabolism, but it can guide us, like it can narrow down that we may want to use recombinant or specific antibody to investigate further. So as I mentioned earlier previously, there are some differences in the expression and activities of esterase in the blood or in plasma between species. For example, in rat, it has a high abundance of carboxyl esterase activity, while in dog and human, we don't have carboxyl esterase in blood. Or the activity of butyrylcholine esterase in rat is very small, while in dog and human, the activity of the enzyme is kind of high. So But why we need to care about species difference? Because during the drug development process, we usually start the first animal species that we use to do the preclinical study is rat or mice. Then if the result in rats or mice are promising, so we move to the next like higher species like dog, monkey, sheep, whatever, before we go to human. So in drug development process, there are several animal species that are required by the FDA that we need to use to test our drug molecule or our drug candidate, right? So it's better to know if there is any difference in terms of the testing system between species. So in the next, okay. So let's talk about my compound a little bit. I believe that everyone knows turmeric. Turmeric has been used for a very long time as like medicine, as a spice for cooking, as coloring agent. The compound that is responsible for the yellowish color in turmeric is curcumin, which is a polyphenolic compound. If you go to paper database and you search for curcumin, you will see like 10,000 papers of curcumin. This is because curcumin has like plethora of biological activities, either antioxidant, anti-cancer, antibacterial, antiviral, or anti-inflammatory activities, and many more. So curcumin has been investigated in several clinical trials as a treatment of cancers, some cardiovascular diseases, arthritis, diabetes, depression, or many more. But so far, we never see curcumin as a drug product. Why? Because curcumin has low bioavailability, which is resulted from its instability, either chemically and metabolically. So curcumin, excuse me, I need to drink water. The first limitation of curcumin to use as a drug molecule is that it is not stable in aqueous media. So curcumin can undergo hydrolysis and oxidation in aqueous media to give several degradation products. So it is like under debating whether if the biological activities of curcumin is from the curcumin itself or is from its degradation products. Once curcumin gets into the body, it undergoes extensive metabolism, either by reduction pathway or conjugation pathway inside our small intestine or the liver. So these two factors make curcumin to be not successful in clinical studies, but we can still see it as a food supplement because, like for food supplement, we really don't care about bioavailability of the compound. So in my previous lab, we developed several curcumin ester-based products, and one of it is the curcumin 𝘱𝑒𝑡hyl-disoxynate, which the structure is shown here. So our previous lab member developed this by adding ethyl-succinyl group to the phenolic group of curcumin here. Because these two phenolic groups play a major role in the degradation and metabolism of curcumin. So our previous lab member shows that CD is much more stable than curcumin in phosphate buffer, and it can be considered as a prodrug because it can release curcumin in human plasma. But things happen when this CDD was used in a pharmacokinetic study in rats. So in this study, the person who did this research never found CDD in plasma samples obtained from rats. So they could not establish the pharmacokinetics parameters or pharmacokinetics properties of curcumin from this study. So instead, they need to to use the indirect method by analyzing curcumin released from CDD instead to establish pharmacokinetic behavior of CDD. So this is kind of a trap that when we didn't have a knowledge about how CDD behave in plasma matrix. So after this work is out, so we decide to take a step back to see how stable or how fast CDD can be degraded in the plasma matrix. Then this is my work now. So we decide to perform plasma metabolism or plasma stability of CDD in plasma from 3 species. So I picked rat, dog, and human as the representative plasma matrix for this study. I picked rat because it is the most common, it's not, I will not say it's the most common, but it is the common rodent species that we use in preclinical study, and rodent species is required by regulatory agency when we develop new compounds. And dog is kind of another species that is usually used as a non-rodent species required by the FDA, I would say. And of course, human, because we want to use it in human. You can see here at time 0, we have a lot high intensity of CDD, and the peak intensity of CDD decreased over time. And over time, we can see that there are 2 emerged peaks appear in this HPLC chromatogram. We designated the peak at around 1.3 here as M1, and the peak at around 2 minutes at M2. So M1 is from metabolite 1 and M2 is from metabolite 2. If you look at this profile, you can see that M2 metabolite here gradually increased and then reached to the peak and decreased over time, while for M1 at the starting point it doesn't appear in the chromatogram, but it gradually increased over time. So if we converted this HPLC profile here into time intensity plot here, so we can see that CDD decreased over time while CDD decreased. M2 peaks, M2 compound appears at least the maximum and then decrease over time. And M1 gradually increase over time until constant, but this is not constant, probably due to some, but it should be constant once we don't have CD and M2 in the matrix. When we perform chemical kinetic analysis to see, to determine the half-life of CDD in these 3 matrices, we found that in rat plasma, CDD degrades very fast with the half-life of less than 0.1 minute. And CDD is the most stable in dog plasma with a half-life about 8 minutes. And we strongly believe that this rapid degradation was mediated by an enzyme, because if we compare in the non-enzymatic system, which is phosphate buffer, CDD has a half-life of about 500 minutes, which is more than 8 hours. So if we look at the structure of CDD here, we can expect that, okay, there are 5 possible metabolites can form during hydrolysis of CDD in plasma matrices, with the cleavage of 1 ethyl group here, the cleavage of 2 methyl group, the cleavage of this whole group, and leave 1 group here. and the cleavage of additional ethyl group here from this side. And the last one is the curcumin, which is the removal of 2 ethyl succinyl group from CDD here. So how to determine the structure of possible metabolites here? So we can use LCM SMS to analyze our sample and see which compound could be detected in the LCM SMS system. So these are calculated mass per charge ratio of these possible metabolites. I scanned for all of these, but I found only 2 peaks, which is inconsistent with HPLC analysis. So the first one that I found in the sample appears at about 1.2 to 1.3 minutes. So it shows up in the mass chromatogram that I scanned in this mass lens. When I click to this peak, it shows the mass of 369, which is equal to the mass of curcumin. So to further confirm that this is really curcumin, because many compounds can have like this mass per charge ratio of 369, I did fragmentation to get mass fragmentation pattern. And I compare this mass fragmentation pattern with the curcumin standard. And this mass fragmentation pattern matched with the one that I obtained from curcumin standard. So this data confirm that M1 metabolite is curcumin. The next compound that I found was from the mass chromatogram that I scanned for this mass range. In left plasma, we can see it is like a small peak, but it is actually not very small, but it is small to this peak here. In dog and human plasma also show the same thing. For this peak, I believe that this is from phospholipid appear or present in plasma samples. So we kind of ignore this peak, but instead we focus on this peak. When I click into this peak, I got the mass spectrum with the mass of 497, which is equal to this metabolite, or which is equal to this structure. So again, I perform fragmentation to obtain the fragmentation patterns. And the fragmentation pattern for this compound give the mass of curcumin and other mass that are appearing in the MSMS spectrum of curcumin. Again, I also use mass spectrums with the standards of this compound, and the mass spectrums of the sample here and the standard, they kind of match. So we can conclude that in the hydrolysis process of CDD in plasma, CDD undergoes hydrolysis to M2 metabolite by being removed the first ethyl succinyl group, and then the second ethyl succinyl group is removed and give curcumin as the terminal metabolite or ultimate metabolite here. Then I investigate to see whether which enzymes involved in the hydrolysis of curcumin. I decided to use inhibitor approach because it is the cheapest one, and it seems to be kind of, in many researches in this area, many people have used inhibitor approach to determine the enzyme involved in the plasma metabolism. So this is the result. It seems to be a little bit complicated, so I'll go with it slowly. So I use several inhibitors here. So VNPP is the selective inhibitor for carboxyl esterase. BW2X4C51 is an inhibitor for acetylcholine esterase. 𝘂𝑂MPA is an inhibitor for butyrylcholine esterase. Iserine here inhibit both acetylcholine and butyrylcholine esterase. TLCK, PMSF, PIF4 inhibitors of serine hydrolase. And this serve as kind of a confirmation for the involvement of these three enzymes, because these three enzymes, they are in serine hydrolase family. The TNB inhibit allyl esterase by doing the disulfide bond exchange with the enzyme. EDTA and ETTA are metal ion chelator, which can chelate calcium ion that is required for the activity of para-oxonase, and sodium fluoride is the non-specific inhibitor. If you look at the inhibition here, you can see that in red plasma we get strong inhibition from BNPP and 𝘂𝑂MPA, and the inhibition from PMSF and PIF4 kind of support the first two results here. From this result, we may conclude that, okay, carboxyl esterase and butyrylcholine esterase involved in the hydrolysis of CDD in red plasma. But there is an issue, because from the iserine result, we didn't see any inhibition from iserine here. But why we see the inhibition by 𝘂𝑂MPA, right? So there is evidence showing that actually 𝘂𝑂MPA really can inhibit the activity of CES. So from that evidence and our result from iserine, we can eliminate the involvement of butyrylcholine esterase in the hydrolysis of CDD in plasma. So we conclude that in red plasma, only carboxyl esterase is involved with the hydrolysis of CDD. So in dog and human plasma, the results are pretty similar. So we see some inhibition from BNPP. In dog plasma, we can see some small inhibition from 𝘂𝑂MPA, right? And we also some inhibition from EGTA. So let's go back to BNPP first. As we can see here, BNPP at 1 millimolar show significant inhibition in both dog and human plasma. It may suggest that, okay, in dog and human plasma, carboxyl esterase may involve with the CDD hydrolysis, but we already know that in dog and human plasma, they don't have carboxyl esterase. This could be something else in plasma sample that involved with the hydrolysis of CDD. In dog, butyrylcholine esterase seems to be a minor pathway for CDD hydrolysis, because it shows a small inhibition here. For DTNB, we can see also a similar extent of inhibition compared to BNPP, right? Which means that it may involve with the hydrolysis of CDD. I mean, every esterase may involve with the hydrolysis of CDD in dog and human plasma. Again, there is another protein class that I haven't mentioned earlier. So it is the protein that is the most abundant in our blood, which is albumin. So albumin has been reported for its esterase-like activity and its esterase-like activity. So we think that the inhibition from BNPP and DTNB may also came from the inhibition of these inhibitors to the activity of albumin. So from this table, we can draw a kind of schematic of enzyme involved with the plasma metabolism of CDD like this. So in human, the enzyme that involved with the hydrolysis may be paraoxonase or 𝘊𝘭𝘆 and albumin, while in dog, paraoxonase, 𝘊𝘭𝘆, butyrylcholine esterase, and albumin may involve in the hydrolysis of CDD, and in rat, only carboxyl esterase involved with the hydrolysis of CDD. Although we can say we are not 100% sure that this enzyme involved with the hydrolysis of CDD in these plasma matrices, and further study with recombinant enzyme may be necessary, but at least this inhibitor approach can narrow down the enzyme that we need to use in the recombinant enzyme approach. So in conclusion, the in vitro plasma stability and metabolism of new ester compounds should be studied during early stage of drug discovery process or drug development process. The processes for studying in vitro stability and metabolism involve the determination of kinetic of degradation process, the investigation of the degradation or metabolism time profile, the identification of enzymes involved with the metabolism, and the identification of metabolite form in the matrix. And all of this information we can use to predict the in vivo behavior of our drug candidate and can be used for designing experiment for future study. And I would like to acknowledge my previous advisors and many people that involved with my research, as well as these institutes, for allowing me to use their research facilities. And I would be happy to take any questions. It does not depend. It really need not to be about research, but could be something else about studying in the US as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pahweenvaj, for the amazing presentation. And as you all know, it is now time for the Q&A session. And here we have a few questions ready by the participants. There are 4 questions from Celine, and 1 from Diana, and another one from Shahid Anwar. So I'll start with the first question. Which one is better between prodrugs and soft drugs? Or does it depend on targeted problems?
Yeah, so for the first question, we can say which one is better between prodrug and soft drug. It really depends on the drug molecule and application. I would say that maybe most of the drugs in the market are soft drugs, so we can get the action directly, right? But in terms of the drug discovery and development process, we prefer to develop soft drug first. But if the soft drug have undesired pharmacokinetics, not pharmacokinetics, physical, chemical, or biopharmaceutical properties, like it may have like very low solubility, very low permeability, we may have to add something else to the molecule and make it into prodrugs. So prodrugs approach is usually used to solve the problem of soft drug.
All right, so that's for the first question. For the second question, do all active compounds can be considered for prodrugs design or development?
So you can make any. The question is it really necessary to do the prodrugs? If that compound already has good properties, I would say that we don't need to make it into prodrug.
Oh, all right. And how about for the third question? Is there any limitations in development of prodrugs?
Oh, sure. Everything has limitations. I would say, for example, to make a prodrug, at least you have to have functional groups that could be used to attached, I think I forgot to mention something. So the group that we attach to it active moiety is called pro-moiety, and that pro-moiety should be inactive. So you need certain functional groups on a drug candidate that can be linked to the pro-moiety that we plan to add to the molecule. The second limitation would be sometimes when you make a product, it may have like worsened properties. For example, it may have lower water solubility. So you have to like screen many pro-moieties to get like the products that have improved physical, chemical, and biopharmaceutic properties. And the third limitation would be, like I show you in here, for ester products, they are kind of susceptible to the hydrolysis mediated by esterase. So it would be a limitation when you study pharmacokinetic studies, that you need to like realize that when you collect sample, your product may degrade over time, and you need to find a way to stop that degradation process. It just like add up your work.
All right, and the fourth question from Celine is, how long do you conduct in vitro analysis before proceeding to in vivo, and what is the main indicator that gives the signal for us to move in to study in vivo study?
That is a very good question, and honestly, I have no idea because I never have an experience in the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, I never have experience in the pharmaceutical industry that really produce the new drug candidate. But I would say that in major pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, Roche, or Merck, they use, for the in vitro screening, they can use robots, and they do a kind of high throughput screening, which can finish in vitro assay like maybe less than a week before they can decide if the drug candidate can go to in vivo experiments or not.
Okay.
So I would say that it is the way faster in a company compared to work done in academia, because we are robots in academia, right?
Interesting. All right. And okay, that answers the fourth question. And the fifth question from Liana N. Curcumin is a natural product but with biopharmaceutical properties. Do you have any other approaches to improve their bioavailability other than metabolism inhibitors?
I think you might want to ask whether if we want to use curcumin as a drug, is there any approach besides adding metabolism inhibitor along with curcumin, right? Of course, that you have. You can do certain formulations, for example, like nano formulations, like putting curcumin into nanoparticles that can prevent curcumin from surrounding inside the body, and can increase the absorption of curcumin by putting, when you put curcumin into nanoparticle, it is prevented from degradation in certain environment, for example, like enzymes or acid or bases inside our guts. And the absorption can be increased because of it is in nanoparticle, so it increased, how do you say that? It's like the epithelium lining will like engulf the nanoparticle into the cells and break nanoparticles down by like some endocytosis lysosomal pathway, and then push curcumin to the bloodstream. So in my previous lab, we also do the nano formulation approach to increase the bioavailability and absorption of curcumin as well. And even the product approach, it also work because like we also tested pharmacodynamic or pharmacological activity of curcumin product, and curcumin product show better pharmacological activities compared to curcumin. which means that curcumin product can improve the absorption of curcumin to the body.
All right. Does that answer your question, Diana? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pahweenvaj. And the sixth question from Shahid. How can you improve the inhibition of metabolism for certain components, especially in human study?
How can you improve inhibition metabolism? Let me think how you can improve inhibition metabolism of certain component. I would say actually it's not good to like could you like make the question clearly? I'm not totally understand like what does it mean for inhibition of metabolism in the body.
Shahid, would you
if you look at you give the result for the inhibition between the rat, dogs, and human, and some of the result there's some result are better in rat, some better in dogs, and not in human. So, is there a particular is the lack of inhibition percentage in human? In your opinion, it should be the same in the rat and dog, also in human, or is it okay if human have a less inhibition compared to rat and dog in certain of the compound that you mentioned before?
Oh, so the inhibitors I use in the study is used to determine the enzyme involved, so it's not intended to minimize the degradation of CDD. So basically, you can. So we have to separate into two scenario. If we want to find a way to stop degradation of our compound ex vivo, which means that we take our sample out, I mean, we took our blood out, and we want to stop the degradation of our compound ex vivo. So we need to find the best inhibitor that can inhibit degradation of our compound, and that inhibitor can be different between animal species. For example, the best inhibitor for rat would be BNPP, right? But for dog and human plasma, we may have to find another way, or the different inhibitors that can totally block the degradation of CDD in the matrix. But in the case of we take CDD into our body, it's not a good idea to inhibit enzymes in our body, because those enzymes, they degrade not only our CDD, the CDD or our compound, but it also degrades possibly maybe some toxicants from environment, some toxicants from food. So if we inhibit them, we may be in trouble. But there are certain medications that we use inhibitors to improve bioavailability of another compound. For example, an antiviral or anti-HIV regimen. Certain class of anti-HIV drugs are vastly metabolized by our enzyme. So that in one of the anti-HIV regimen, we add another molecule that can inhibit the enzyme that is responsible for the metabolism of another anti-HIV. So that is to make the drug or therapeutics to be effective by using another inhibitor, but it really depends. So we have to do some clinical study about if it is okay to do that.
All right, thank you. I think the next question is also for me. As you can see, nowadays we have a lot of product in our, especially in nutraceuticals, that they claim they make cream for cumin, and then the cream can do and that. Do you think that is it necessary for the cream to undergo the pharmacokinetic pathway analysis before they can claim that things? Because we know that researchers use the curcumin itself in the studies, right? But somehow, when we turn it into a new product, it should be tested in the same way as a original curcumin, isn't it?
So that's an interesting question. So it really depends on how that product, I mean, not the product molecule, but the product, like cream product, is registered to the regulatory agency. If it is registered as maybe cosmetic, we don't need to do any pharmacokinetics. But if it is registered as a drug product, we need to conduct pharmacokinetic property studies of that certain drug product. But it's okay if we want to do as a research. So we might want to know, let's say if we add curcumin to a cream, we might want to know if curcumin can really permeate into our skin, right? Even though we want to register it as a cosmetic product. If we have that kind of skin permeation data, we can claim that, okay, our cream can really deliver curcumin into skin to help with, like, maybe make skin looks better, something like that. But it is unnecessary for like cosmetic product to do that. But if you want to register curcumin cream as the drug product, you certainly need to determine both pharmacokinetic permeation and the therapeutic efficacy of your product.
Okay, thank you, Shahir, for the question, and also Mr. Pahweenvaj for the answers. Is there any more questions from the participants? I'll give you 3 seconds or maybe 5 for you to ask. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 2.5, no, 1.5, 1, 0. Okay, since there's no more questions from the participants, I think I have one for Mr. Pahweenvaj.
Okay.
I guess it's not only me who's wondering, but everyone would be wondering. Since you're from Thailand, how do you find studying in US for PhD? Does it have any difference? Like, what are the challenges that you face during your study in University of Utah?
Okay, so the first thing that is kind of just challenging to me is the language barrier. So in my first semester here, it was like crazy. I need to like adjust myself a lot in the way that people here speak. Like when we study English in our hometown, so the teacher usually like speak slow and speak clearly, but people here, they are not. It took me like maybe about half semester to like get used to it. Even though it's not that my English is still not that good, but I can feel that my English has been improved. Even now, I can like watch movie in the theater here without any subtitle. And the environment here will force you to do everything in English, because like when you want to, let's say, reserve a table in a restaurant, you need to call. The fastest way that you need to get information is to call. In any way, you need to call. So it kind of forces you to speak English and make a phone call. For food, I don't think I have any issue with food. I can say that, so I am living in a kind of a small city, so this may not be the same as in New York City or in LA. But the public transportation is another big thing that very different from my country. So in Bangkok, we can commute by SkyTrain, by buses, but in small cities, so actually, I would say most of the city in the States, people usually rely on their own personal cars. But if you stay in New York City, it's fine. You can use tubes, you can use buses. The weather, so because we are in Southeast Asia, right? So most of the time we have hot weather, but here right now it is, I think it's like 0 degrees right now. Yeah, it's
Celsius?
yes, in Celsius it's like -1 right now. Yeah.
Too cold.
So and we get like kind of snowstorm sometimes, like several times actually. So it's kind of the big difference between regions. And what else? Oh, the unit here for temperature, they use Fahrenheit while we use Celsius degree, right?
Yeah.
And the unit for length, for speed, they are totally different. The speed here they use mile per hour. The length here they use like feet, mile, something like that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay, since I guess there's no more question from me, neither do from the participants. So thank you once again, Mr. Pahweenvaj, for the presentations and answers for the Q&A session. So moving on, ladies and gents, we're finally going towards the end of our first cluster session, the STE session. However, might I ask all of you to stay put after this third round of presentation to take part in the officiate ceremony of this event. Therefore, without further ado, I welcome our third speaker for the STE cluster session, who would be giving a presentation in the monitoring of the pre-seismic ionospheric anomalies using GNSS and other remote sensing satellites, Mr. Abdul-Rafiq Abbasi from the Institute of Space Technology, Pakistan. Please welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. What about you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Okay, what's the time there in Pakistan?
It's like 8 a.m.
Oh,
in the morning.
Oh, it's still, we're like 2 or 3 hours earlier than
3 hours, yes.
Yeah.
We have a 3-hour difference.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess you can present whatever you have for us right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
First of all, I like to pay my gratitude to the UTHM for having me invited on this informative session and sharing my research interest with different researchers. As I am recently graduated from my postgraduate studies, so I have therefore made a generic presentation on this topic for the listeners for their better understanding. Now, as my presentation is on monitoring of pre-seismic or earthquake ionospheric anomalies associated with ionosphere using global navigation satellite systems and other remote sensing satellites. These are the outlines of my presentation. So starting with the background, let us discuss the earthquake. What is an earthquake and how this phenomena occurs? So earthquake is one of the most frequent natural occurring disaster that happens when two tectonic plates collide with each other. So during a seismogenic activity, a massive amount of energy is being released from the lithosphere, that is below the Earth's surface. Now the energy is released from there and travels up to atmosphere, in the lower atmosphere, and then in the upper atmosphere, that is known as ionosphere. So as the waves are traveling from the lower atmosphere or in the upper atmosphere, the Earth's unique atmosphere provides great insight regarding the release of this energy. Yeah. So let us check about what's the atmosphere is composed of. As the atmosphere is composed of different gases, mostly the most abundant gas in our atmosphere is nitrogen, that is about 78%. And from here, if you can see the pictorial image, it describes the altitude wise different layers of our atmosphere, like from the ground level to up till a good 30 or 35 kilometers, we have tropospheric layer of our atmosphere. And in this layer, all weather activities exist, like cloud, rain, showering, thunderstorm, all sort of weather activities occur in our tropospheric layer. And above this layer, we have stratosphere, mesosphere, exosphere, but these all can generally be known as the ionosphere, as there are free moving electrons or ion particles in these layers. So we can generally name them, these layers, as an ionospheric layer of our atmosphere. And during daytime, this layer can stretch up to 1,000 kilometers from the ground level. And above the 1,000 kilometer, we have the outer space region of our atmosphere. There are a couple of factors that can cause disturbances in our atmosphere, like anthropogenic activities or man-made activities, like we have forest fires or missile testing or any explosion that can cause serious effect on our atmosphere and ionosphere. We have witnessed a Beirut explosion back in 2019 that had caused a significant disturbance in our ionosphere and our atmosphere as well. Outer space effects are also very important, as a deep space or nova can cause disturbances, direct disturbances on our atmosphere, and meteor showering is also very important in regard to that context. And lastly, solar effect. As we all know, sun is a giant ball of huge plasma, which can continuously transferring heat energy towards Earth. So it can cause a great disturbance in our atmosphere and our environment as well. Like I said, sun emits electromagnetic radiations in the form of solar wind that carries a majority of electron, protons, and dense plasma. EMR or X-rays ionizes the ionosphere and is also responsible for the formation of auroras. So what happens is, when the solar wind carries these flares or coronal mass ejections, they passes through the different layer of atmosphere, and in the northern and southern hemispheres, where the magnetic field is comparatively weaker than rest of the planet, the energy from the sun can break down the particles in the ionosphere or atmosphere. So while breaking those energies, we can observe the northern lightning like auroras. So that's how the auroras are also formed. During the intense geomagnetic activity or intense solar storm, we can also observe the disruption of power grid and communication signals as well. Like I said, sun produces solar flares and solar winds and coronal mass ejections, and these coronal mass ejections and solar flares are responsible for changing our environment on the earth as well. Now these flares are being driven by solar wind that are highly energetic particles. These particles collide with the magnetic field of our atmosphere, and we have generated, due to this effect, Van Allen belt is formed on outside of our planet. Now Van Allen belts deflect most of those particles away from the earth, but somehow if most of the particles if passes through the Van Allen belt, then we have Earth's own magnetic field, which traps those X-rays or UV particles and drag it towards the ionosphere. Through this process, we can observe or we can monitor different ionospheric vulnerabilities or disturbances in our ionospheres as well. So what is an ionosphere? The ionosphere is the region between the stratosphere and exosphere. As you can see in this pictorial image that we have two layers of ionosphere during the night time, and on the context of this we have like four ionosphere splits into four different regions during the daytime, as because the sun generally ionizes our ionosphere. So that's the main reason of of our atmosphere that splits the ionosphere into four different regions in the daytime. And as well as during the daytime, these the region stretches this layer up to 1,000 kilometers in altitude. Upper region ionosphere is also the upper region of the atmosphere, which protects us from excessive ultraviolet radiations as well. Now, the sources of ionization in our ionosphere, like I said in my previous slides, that cosmic rays from deep space nova can also cause disturbances in our ionosphere, and is one of the major source of ionization, as well as UV radiations from sun's meteor showering and solar storm, which we have discussed in our previous slides. Now, how we can benefit from these satellite technologies, or how we can utilize satellite technologies to monitor our atmosphere. GNSS. So GNSS is the generic term for global navigation satellite systems. Basically, we have four constellation of these navigation system, and one is very famous, like GPS. We all know GPS. Except GPS, we have GLONASS from Russia. By the way, GPS is from America and GLONASS is from Russia. Galileo from European Agency ESA, and Beidou from China. Now, how can we use these satellite technology system or GNSS to monitor ionosphere? As we know that GNS, all these satellites orbiting around Earth for like up to 25 to 30,000 kilometers above the Earth's atmosphere. So they are using so while they are transmitting these signals from the satellites, they pass through the ionosphere layer of our atmosphere. While entering in the ionosphere, these layers detects diffracts, reflects due to the ionization process in our ionosphere. So now this process can diffract as in ionosphere we have free electron, which can cause great disruption in those signals. And so while receiving those signals, we can calculate the disturbances or biases which satellite signals have detected in the ionosphere, and from these biases we can monitor the ionospheric layer as well as tropospheric layer, and how much disturbance we can cause. Where we can find in these layers is done by mathematical procedures or mathematical equations which are done in the ground-based laboratories by GNSS receivers. Now, Demeter is a micro French satellite which is specifically used to detect and monitor the ionospheric disturbances in seismic related activity and to examine the pre and post seismic effects. The mission was up to for a lifetime of I guess 6 years, as it was launched in 2004 and was decommissioned on I guess March 2011. So it is used to study the ionospheric disturbances in relationship with their relationship with the seismic and volcanic activity. Diameter is also used for the study of the anthropogenic activity and how they can cause disturbances in our ionosphere. Back in 2010, Demeter observed irregularities in ultra low frequency radio waves before the 2010 Haiti earthquake and also during the volcanic eruption of 2010 Mount Perai back in Indonesia. Other than Demeter, we have other Earth observational satellites which are used to monitor atmospheric disturbances, further used to monitor magnetic field of our planet. Some of these missions are Swarm satellite mission, which is used for monitoring tech plasma as well as other irregular disturbances that occur in our atmosphere or ionosphere. Cosmic satellite is also used for the meteorology and ionosphere analysis. Saber, Aries, and MODES. They are used for observe the magnetic field and how solar storm or solar activity causes disturbances in our atmosphere. They are all the considered as Earth observational satellites. Now, seismic induced ionospheric anomalies. What are seismic induced ionospheric anomalies? Energy released from the lithosphere during the seismogenic activity, they can reach up to the ionosphere, from where we can calculate the tech irregularities, and these irregularities may occur like from within 10 days prior to the seismic event. Now, there is one thing worth mentioning here. What is like phenomena, or what is lithosphere atmosphere ionospheric coupling phenomena? Now, different researchers proposes different coupling phenomena to study seismic induced ionospheric anomalies. Like in 2009, in the center panel, we have a friend which proposes in 2009 that due to the stress induced around the seismogenic area, a positive hole erupts underneath the surface of the surface, causing condensation process on the in the lower atmosphere and ionizes water molecules, which splits into oxygen and hydrogen atoms from the they drift vertically upward into the lower atmosphere first and then in the ionosphere. Likewise, 𝘗 in 2014 proposes the same theory that the charged particles due to the condensation electrically ionized particles, which in results drift vertically upward into the ionosphere. Similarly, Kamogawa in 2006 describes the relationship between the atmospheric gravity waves and electrically charged particles that causes disturbances in ionosphere during the seismogenic activity. Back in 2015, 𝘗𝘳𝘺 proposes another lithospheric ionospheric coupling phenomena, in which he proposes that the radon emits due to the stress induced between the rocks during the seismogenic activity. The radon releases from these rocks and travels up to the lower atmosphere, or what we call as troposphere. These radons are very radioactive. They ionizes the gas molecules, and latent heat of vaporization is produced as a result. These thermal anomalies disclose themselves and propagate vertically upward including OLR and we can observe temperature growth during this timeline as well. Now, all of these can be detected at the top of the clouds, and possibly they can further affect the ionosphere. Now, what we are working in 2021, like in the past year, we along with Sergei Paulinets proposes the same, where we showed that during the process, due to the radioactivity and thermoelectric effect in the ionosphere or troposphere, we can predict the enhancement or irregularities in tech of the ionosphere during the seismogenic region. And this in abnormality in tech or OLR can vary from region to region. Like we have a study on Latin America. On Latin American region, due to South Atlantic anomaly, due to the region that is South Atlantic anomaly energized, we have observed the enhancement in tech and as well as in OLR. But in Taiwan region, we have observed a depleted tech region, depleted tech anomalies, and depleted OLR in the Taiwan region. So from these studies, we may propose that the emission of the radon gases and alpha charged particles or radioactive particles might give us information regarding the forthcoming of any earthquake event. However, more studies are still required in this regard. We further propose that by applying course station or continuously operating reference station can give more insight of the seismogenic area, but we have to keep one thing in our mind, that we have to check the earth geomagnetic indexes or solar storm indexes, as they can cause disruption in our ionosphere. So what we propose is that if we check the planetary index, that is, if the planetary index is less than 3, then we can continue with our this lithospheric, atmospheric, ionospheric coupling phenomena. Otherwise, we may have found difficulties in predicting or monitoring the ionosphere and relate these anomalies to the earthquake activity. Coast network may also help in monitoring the slip displacement and deformation during the seismic event. After the earthquake, you know that we have also observed that there are land deformation due to the seismic event. So course network will help us to monitor how much deformation or how much displacement we can get from this seismic event. Similarly, spectral analysis of GNSS tech can be an good analysis or help us to understand the morphology of the electron concentrations. Along with electron perturbations in the ionosphere, magnetic field and electric field of the earth can also give us the insight of the impending earthquake. We have a global electric earth current phenomena occurring in our atmosphere, which also give us the information of the impending earthquake. Like Kamogawa in 2006 also proposes the same process. He uses atmospheric gravity waves and their relationship with the seismogenic activity. So what we propose is that if we can keep all these phenomena in mind, we can one day somehow predict the earthquake, hopefully. And that is the general presentation that I have made for this conference or this associate or this interaction with the students and the bodies here. That's all from my side. And if you have any other question regarding this process or any other regarding atmospheric process, I'm more than willing to give you answer or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdur, for the awesome knowledge. You know the drills. If you have any inquiries, don't be shy to turn on your mics or write down your questions in chat box or comment section. And here we already have our first question from Shahir Anwar. What kind of data is used to predict the earthquake? Is it total electron content?
Oh, okay. So total electron content is in ionosphere, but for a complete chain mechanism, we have to start from the ground level or below the ground level where this process originates. As we know that during the earthquake, tectonic plates collide with each other. So before colliding or before collision, we have observed the emission of heat or energy in the form of different gases or radon. Radon is very much important in this process, as during the seismic event, radon erupts from the beneath the or what we can see is the hypocenter of the earthquake, beneath the earth's surface, which travels in through the lower atmosphere or the surface of the which is known as epicenter of the an earthquake above the ground level. And those radon are the radioactive that can energizes the particles or electrons in the water molecules, which can use a which can apply a condensation process, and due to this condensation process with the water molecules of the radon, oxygen atoms and hydrogen atoms split from each other and energizes to create an electric field around this region. Now this electric field drifted upwards, vertically upwards to the lower atmosphere, then in the upper atmosphere, and after then into the ionosphere, which can energizes or causes disturbances in the ionosphere, as ionosphere is consists of free electrons. Now, so in the ionosphere, we have electron contents and free gases. So now what happens is when these charge carriers entering into the ionosphere, they can energizes those particles, and we can observe electron content disruption in this layer. So this is a whole mechanism which we are working currently in our research group. Like we are working with we have a group of 10 people from 4 different nations around the world. Now we are proposing this phenomena to the research to different research centers to work on this process and to make this process a bit easier for the understanding of the researchers, so that they can be able to predict the earthquake and forthcoming of any earthquake during the seismogenic event, and can generate an alarm system for the earthquake.
Okay, maybe one question from me. So basically, you are using 𝘵𝘺𝑚𝑒𝑡𝑒r satellite data, is it? Because it can trace all the earthquake issues. I know that satellite is moving, right? Moving around our Earth. So it can detect if the earthquake happened far away from the distance of the satellite. Doesn't it affected the data that you get? Meaning that the position, the azimuth angle, the angle between the position of the satellite and also the position of the earthquake happen. Does it happen for the data that you get?
Well, as you said, the satellites are far above from the Earth's surface, and this process is started beneath the Earth process. Now, what happens is that we have GNSS which are continuously orbiting our Earth. Now, like in the scenario of GPS, we have 32 satellites which are continuously orbiting and give a millimeter second accuracy in regard to the monitoring of our atmosphere. Now, apart from GNSS or GPS, we have other Earth observational satellites, like 𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑡𝑒r is now decommissioned. 𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑡𝑒r is decommissioned in 2011, I guess. After then, we have several satellites which give us broader or greater spectral and spatial resolutions, from which we can observe these phenomena apart from this phenomena, we can also predict, we can also observe cyclones, like we have observed latest Tonga volcanic eruption. Now, what happens in Tonga, that we have observed a pattern of earthquake beneath those volcanic region. Now, after the eruption, satellite, I'm not sure, but these images are circulating on the internet of the explosion, that how much disturbance it caused in our atmosphere. Now, what happens is that satellite is continuously sending signals, remote signals, or signals around to the Earth. Now, when they pass through the ionosphere, then they can easily detect what happens in the ionosphere and what will going to happen in our troposphere, or where we are, where all the weather activity lies. Now, it can sense those signals or disturbances, and then feed back to the satellites, which in returns send those signals back to the ground reference stations, that we have found, or we had observed those anomalies in this region. So what researchers and scientists are doing, that they gather those data, and applying or observe and scientifically analyze those data in terms of their own analysis.
All right. Any more questions from the participants?
Maybe one more question. Because this is kind of interesting topic actually. Yeah. So what about, I saw in your conclusion here, more analysis TEC monitoring during KP less than 3. So do you have any expected during the disturb time and quiet time? You know, does this does your research you look at on that or not?
Yes, obviously, as you know, that KP reflects to the geomagnetic storm that is happening on our Earth. But it is also important to check what happens to the magnetic field of the Earth, or what is the behavior of the magnetic field. So for that, we have another index that is known as disturbance storm index, which is used to monitor the magnetic field of our Earth, that how weak or how much strength our Earth has during this event. Generally, it may refers to normal days also, but for the earthquake related activity, or earthquake related research, it is important to know that what is the behavior of a magnetic field. Like if we have weak magnetic field, so what is the reason of this weak magnetic field? Is this due to the sun impact, solar impact, that wind causes this magnetic field to behave abruptly, or this is something else? And so after then, when we make sure that there is no interruption from the outer space or any anthropogenic activity that causes the geomagnetic storm or weak electric field, we can pursue, or we can forward to this and work much more on this regard, and we can somehow make assumptions. Well, it is not clear, but we have to make assumptions that this may are due to the earthquake. Obviously, we have to check many other parameters, like I said, radon activity, alpha particle decaying of those particles, thermal latent activity, OLR, TAC. After then, we can say that this may be due to the earthquake, but still we are not very clear what is the cause of these anomalies in our ionosphere. But yes, you are right that for the start of this research, or within this specific area, we have to keep observing the magnetic field, which is which is transferring from different research corners that we have to observe a magnetic field like less than 3. On the scale of from 0 to 9, if the magnetic field is less than 3, then we can say that there is no such impact of any other solar activity or outer space activity on our Earth. So now after then we can find our own parameters in the regard of this context.
Okay, thank you. Maybe last question from me. Last question.
Sure.
Okay, so how do you validate your data? Meaning, only what do you do and how do you validate? Instead of looking at the lithosphere and also ionosphere data, so how do you validate the data? Thank you.
Okay. Now, regarding about the TAC or GNSS, we have IGS stations which are continuously giving us RINEX files. We use those RINEX files in a MATLAB, and we are extracting our desired information. In this context, we are observing the TAC total or total electron content from those RINEX files. After then, we have, if we are talking about other Earth observational satellites, they have their own data centers. It's worth mentioning that 𝘗𝘵𝘦 Data Center or the 𝘗𝘵𝘦 Data Service Center, which is also operated by NASA, provides several outputs or several data services like SO2, CO, carbon monoxide, OLR, surface temperature, sea surface temperature, and other geomagnetic and indexes can also be provided from 𝘗𝘵𝘦 and OmniWeb. So each satellite mission has its own data centers where we can collect these data and use our analysis on a MATLAB environment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Abdur, for the clarifications. Is there any more questions? The Q&A session is still open. Any more questions? I'll be counting to 10 from 10 seconds. If there's no more questions, I guess it's gonna be the end. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Okay, 0. Okay, there's no more questions from the participants, but I do have one question for you, Mr. Abdur. So regarding this research is a high-end research. What motivates you to do this kind of research?
Well, as a postgraduate student, in a GNSS, I had my post-graduation in global navigation satellite systems. So I have to choose a topic for my thesis and for my research. I never wanted to work on the receiver section or data signal process section of the GNSS, as they are more complicated than many others. So what I have left is for the space physics or outer space and how they can impact our environment. And actually, it's a very unique research in this regard that no one is considering those parameters and analyzing those parameters in context of the natural hazards. I mean, if apart from earthquake, like cyclones have a deep impact on our ionosphere, ionosphere is a very important layer for the radio communications or communications that are happening in our atmosphere. But no one is I believe no one is serious enough to work in this regard. So what I'm doing is that I'm working on this aspect of the ionosphere or atmosphere and bring my research to the research community, that this is also an area where we can where we can improve our knowledge, and we can improve our understanding for the with regard to our atmosphere. As atmosphere is very unique. Earth has its own atmosphere, but the impact of sun or solar activity on our atmosphere is very much in context to the vulnerabilities, and in terms of the accessibility of these vulnerabilities. So my motivation is to use these satellite technologies in human friendly environment to get most out of these satellite technologies, while as to make sure that we can make this this earth a better place for living. Like if we are observing right now in current situation which is happening in Tonga, it's very much vulnerable due to those volcanic activities. So if we are able to predict before the happening of this event, like in my slide I showed, I showed, and in my research publication I have also checked those parameters from those like from with the help of those parameters we can predict I know earthquake or volcanic eruption more or less 5 or 10 days before the impending of those natural disasters. So if we can predict those disasters before our before they're happening, we can save many lives and we can save many infrastructure through those research. So that's my motivation of the research.
All right, thank you for the answer, Mr. Abdurrafiq.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, that wraps up our first cluster session for today's event. Mr. Abdur, you may stop sharing the screen now. And yeah, thanks. Once again, thank you so much for the fruitful sharing and knowledge. Before we proceed to the next event, can I hear a word from Professor Dr. Shahrudin, our special person for today, the Dean of the Center for Graduate Studies? Are you here?
Hello.
Okay, nice to see you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, today's event will not be complete without a ceremony. Thus, in order to make this event an official event, we invite Professor Dr. Shahrudin bin Mahsan, alias Muhammad Zin, the Dean of the Center for Graduate Studies, UTHM, to officiate today's program. Please welcome Professor.
Alhamdulillah, thank you, Mrs. MC, Miss Vanessa Lia. Okay, all respected participants, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear me? Clear?
Yes, we can
right.
hear you.
So, Alhamdulillah, we are very grateful to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala for giving us the opportunity to gather for today International Graduate Sharing Session with the topics of sustainable knowledge and research across boundaries. So to begin with, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to GSA, to the organizers, Mr. Sahih, Miss Liana, to name a few, and also the Center for Graduate Studies, UTHM. So my heartfelt appreciation also goes to FTK Postgraduate Student Chapters Committee and also Tun Said Nasir Residential College as the co-organizer. So well done. So I hope everybody has contributed to the valuable time to make this program a reality. So I appreciate once again for inviting me to make an official remarks for today's program. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of UTHM, a great pleasure to welcome all International Graduate Sharing Session, Sustainable Knowledge and research across boundaries. So I believe by looking at the names, I came across that there are multiple countries across the world, across the globe. So there are Ms. Pahweenvaj from US, Mr. Abdul Rafeh from Pakistan, Ms. 𝘗𝘳𝘳𝘦 from Indonesia, and also Muhammad Faraz Mubarak from Lithuania, as well as Ms. Syazwana from UMP, and also Mr. 𝘊𝘥𝘥𝘪𝘶𝘦𝘠 from UTHM. So thank you for participating with us. So I am very delighted to have all postgraduates across the globe, okay, to join, even though I believe in Europe or in US, the time gap is quite large. So I think it is about 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning, right? In what do you call it? In Lithuania. Okay, so it's a 7-hour gap. So I believe US is much more. So maybe at midnight now. So though they are very committed to participate with us, even though the time gap. So thank you very much once again for participating in this event. So everything is possible now, okay, with the internet. So with the online system, there are nothing that can separate us anymore. So everything on the fingertips. So what is more important is the commitment of the students, the commitment of the participant. So to grab all the information, all the sharing session, to learn from each other in how to establish a good network, how to conduct a successful research activities, and so forth. So so I hope that this sharing session will succeed its goal, providing an effective platform for academicians, researchers, and students to advance knowledge, research, technology for sustainability. So I hope that this is not the first event and then die. I hope it to be continued for the second and third and so forth. So even though the organizers might change, but the program itself should be continued to benefit all the postgraduate students particularly in UTHM, and also from other institutions as well. So we are also currently experiencing a transformation of the global research and innovation enterprise as R&D expenditure and innovation activities increase globally. So the world has increased in investment in research and development. So naturally, there are increased expectation of the research community to make scientific breakthrough in response to today's greatest challenge. And I'm quite interested in Mr. Abdul Rafeh Abasi. I haven't had the opportunity to hear from Ms. Syazwana and also Ms. Pahweenvaj, but I do listen a little bit on Abdul Rafeh Abasi, and it is quite interesting to analyze before the event, before the what you call it, the event is happening. So it can be initially conducted prior to the event, and we can make special arrangement to sustain the outcome lah. Okay. While researchers are focused on scientific advancement and also the effect, the importance of sustainable knowledge cannot be overstated. So I believe that knowledge, research, and technology should be made available to all people, to all students, wherever they are, and should be benefit all. So this is very important. So by accomplish our own, whether through research or enough, okay, to make realm of knowledge. So everybody must contribute, everybody must take part in the development of research as well. So ladies and gentlemen, we also should consider some of the mankind concerns today. So issues such as climate change, environmental degradation, at present the COVID-19, the infectious diseases, okay, and the resources depletion that have a worldwide impact. So everybody across the globe is currently struggling, okay, to make the better life. So for those who considering the scale of the challenge, so the only rational course of action is to engage in a diverse array of experts to work together throughout the world. So I believe that this program, with its aim to exchange ideas, with the intention to all parties to make benefit from the discussion. So this might be a correct platform, a wonderful platform for us to share our knowledge. So it is a point that all sessions address different topics from a broad range of interesting theoretical and practical area, including but not limited to cluster of science, technology, and research, but also in social science, humanities, and education. So I believe that this is the right move, the correct way for us to make engagement with other postgraduate students throughout the world, share our knowledge and what we did in Malaysia and what we did in our country that might benefit them. And also we might emulate what they did in the part in the country to suit our sustainable activities in Malaysia. So on that line, I hope that this virtual international graduate sharing session would be a beneficial platform for exchanging ideas and sharing research experiences. So I hope everyone involved in this program a very good and also benefit to this program. So with the word of Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I officially officiate today's program. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Shahrudin bin Mazan alias Muhammad Zin, for officiating this event. On behalf of the committee, I would like to also thank the speakers for today, Ms. Syazwana, Mr. Pahweenvaj, and Mr. Abdur for spending their time and knowledge with us, and also for the active participations from the participants in this program. But before we leave for our lunch break for Malaysian, kindly turn on your camera for a photography session with the speakers. I'll be giving you all 10 seconds to turn on your camera for our photography session. One, I'll count down from now. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any more? Turn on your camera, please. The speakers are also invited to turn on their camera. Okay, any more? We'll be waiting for a lot more people to come, so I'll give you guys a few more minutes. Okay, if there's no more, I think I'll start screenshotting now. So here I go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, for the next page. Wait a second. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I guess that is all. So, oops. Okay, so this is the end of our session. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now that the first 3 speakers is over and the event is finally officiated, you may all go and have your lunch break for Malaysians. But if the other speakers who come from different countries would like to have their lunch, probably, I don't know. So you may all go as well. But might I remind you that this event is not over yet. All are advised to come back to the meeting link by 2 p.m. Malaysian time for the second session of the second cluster, Social Science, Humanities and Education, SSHE. And don't forget to fill in the attendance form that will be given in the chat box or comment section in YouTube as a proof that you are here with us this morning. I guess that is all from me. Stay safe wherever you are.